Hi.
Thank you so much, Stevie.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you making the time. I know you're super busy, super chased by everybody. So let's do a brief introduction, right?
Yeah.
To kick things off, do a quick intro on my side so I can get out of the way. It's your show. I'm Sammy Chowdhury, co-founder and chief compliance officer at Prescient Security. Our mission is to simplify security and compliance for all. We have about 5,000 customers globally today that are in the SaaS and AI space that we support through SOC 2, ISO, PCI, High Trust, FedRAMP, CMMC, all of these different standards. Our partnership with Vanta goes back a long time. We purchased Vanta to do our own SOC 2 because one of our enterprise clients asked for SOC 2 and didn't know where to start. And so that's how we kind of over time build the partnership. So with me, I have Stevie. Before I turn the mic over to her, I just want to say that she took the company from like sub 20 million to like $100 million. That's what she's known for is driving revenue. But today we're gonna go over a different topic. I wanted to really know a little bit more about her product vision because without having a product uh, to back you up when you're selling, you can't really be successful. I'm personally a technical seller, and so I feel that's important. So with that, please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk about this. I don't get as much opportunity to talk about product, and I'm very passionate about it. So excited for the conversation. So, Stevie Case, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Vanta. Vanta is an AI powered trust management platform, and our mission is to help businesses earn and prove trust. We are now about an 8-year old company. We are global. We've got a great, incredible team out there working with businesses of all kinds. We've got about 14,000 customers, and they range from very early stage founder led startups all the way to large enterprises. And some of those are tech forward enterprises. Some of them are very classic enterprises. We work with a battery company and a beef company and a company that makes tractors. So, we kind of serve a little bit of everybody. And it's been a wild journey. I'm about 3.5 years in at Vanta, and we have seen a lot of growth. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Great. So I'm going to start off with some quick fire questions. Let's see if we can ice the break here, or break the ice here, rather. Um, so first question is, who's Kill Creek?
Okay, that's a really good question. I like to claim her as me, but definitely a persona that I have been in the past. So I once upon a time, many, many, many years ago, was in college, meant to be a lawyer, was pre-law, and started playing a lot of video games. And this is late 90s. Okay,
Right.
so very not to totally date myself, but quite a while ago. Doom was out. I was playing a lot of Doom. Then Quake, the original Quake came out, first
Hmm.
person shooter on PC. Great game. Played a lot of that with my dorm mates, and it turned out I got pretty good at it. So I had to come up with a gamer name,
Hmm.
hence Kill Creek. Kill Creek happened to be a creek, a literal creek I grew up near, and also the name of my favorite band when I was in college. So I co opted that. And I started playing a lot of games. Turns out I got really good. I got an opportunity to play the guy who designed Quake and Doom, and I beat him at his own game. And that snowballed into the beginning of my tech career where I was the world's first female pro gamer. And if not for that, I would not be here. It was not a direct path, but that's where it started.
That's fascinating. I wanted to hear the story behind this name. Most overused buzzword in compliance.
Oh gosh. That's tough. There are so many. There are a lot of acronyms, a lot of buzzwords. It's not really a buzzword, but like I think that the obsession with low cost is so misdirected. There's this like
Absolutely.
obsession with like, how do we do this for less?
Right.
The reality is we are dealing with something that is so fundamental to protecting companies,
Right.
to how companies build their product. Like this should be something that companies invest in.
Absolutely.
And, I think that there are a lot of executives who maybe haven't fully wrapped their brain around how important compliance is and how reflective it is of how they operate their companies generally. So I think that there's this mindset maybe that needs to change. I'm hoping it changes. I do think as the risk landscape gets more complex, I think they will start to understand a little bit better that compliance isn't just a checkbox exercise, that this is really right next to cybersecurity, is really right next to how they run their organizations diligently and how they think about risk. So that obsession with cheap is the area that I would love to see disappear from compliance.
Absolutely. We can talk the entire day if we
Yes.
talk about the pricing part of it and the cost and the association with compliance, which is completely wrong. One thing you wish more CEOs talked about AI.
Gosh, so a lot of people are talking about AI.
Hmm.
I think I have a lot of conversations about this. I invest in early stage companies, so I talk to early stage companies, talk to much larger companies about this. I think that there's a lot of excitement. There was a phase we went through where there was a lot of experimental budget, which was great, and everybody got out and started using it. I think that what's missing from the conversation is really the thought about what comes next. There's a real focus on empowerment right now and getting people to use it, and how do we get our teams using AI. But there's like a whole nother level to this of you got to think about build versus buy. Are we buying tools and leveraging their AI powered features that they're shipping? Are we building in house? And with that shift, there needs to be a whole nother type of talent in parts of the business that never had it before. I think about this a lot with revenue operations, for example, in my team. Once upon a time, a RevOps team was mostly system administrators. They were people who set up Salesforce or configured tools. They weren't necessarily engineers. And we are now actually starting to hire engineers in RevOps because we now need to build with AI. So I think CEOs really need to be thinking and talking about how talent shifts and where responsibility for this kind of innovation lives, because the way it's been done historically with this division between go to market and an engineering or product development org, there's like a very artificial wall there. So that creep of engineers is the first part of that picture. But I think we need to transform the way we build our organizations more broadly, because you need people to build inside the walls of your company, not just your core product. So it's going to take a lot of change.
Absolutely. I mean, thinking about AI from inside and out, right? So, how to improve internal efficiency. So you think about SWOT analysis. You got to put AI on
Yes.
every quadrant, if you will.
Yep.
The lamest excuse you have heard from a salesperson.
So many. And I can say this with all love because I am deeply a salesperson. There are many. I think that the most common of these are gonna be the ones where salespeople will tell you they don't have control. Like, I just haven't I'll tell you the worst one. I just haven't heard from them. They went dark. Went dark is like it is the death of me,
Right,
because the truth is everybody will go dark if you
right,
don't run your sales cycle
right,
appropriately, and if you don't, one, provide value.
right.
Like, if you're not showing up and being valuable and being useful to your buyer, of course they're going to go dark. Why would they want to talk to somebody who's just bothering them? Or like,
That's powerful.
yeah, it's so you got to show up and you got to bring value. You need to understand why that other person talked to you in the first place. Like, why did they take the first meeting?
Mhm.
What's the business pain they're trying to solve? And you need to orient all your work around that. I think, salespeople, when they're early in career, they're just learning, they have this tendency to be very focused on themselves and their own deal cycle and getting the information they need to price the deal or get the deal done. It's got to be about the other person.
Yep.
And so that mistake is one of the most common. So when they're telling me they went dark, it's like, well, that's you. That's
Right.
on you. It's not them. They
Yep.
get so frustrated with the buyer, but that's ultimately your fault. So
Yeah.
I don't ever want to hear that from folks. And there's always a way to get people engaged if you're doing something valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, selling on value, which you talk
Yes.
about a lot. I think it's really should be the center of attention there. So last one on quick fire, and then we can go into some more structured questions. What did you find most disturbing in SOC 2 marketing?
Oh my
Because you
gosh.
guys are known to be like really good at marketing. So I want to
I
kind of,
appreciate that. We have an incredible marketing team. I will say though, it's been a learning process
yeah,
for us. We started out much more rudimentary, and I think that the common mistake that gets made in SOC 2 marketing, and we made it in the early days as well, to be clear, is understating the level of effort and the level of complexity. And we are very proud of our product. We automate a huge amount of the work, but we also really value real security. And part of a company building a real security program and achieving SOC 2 compliance in a way that means anything means they have to invest time and
right.
energy and effort, and they need to understand their program. They need to understand what they're building. So I think in those early days, there's always a temptation for every new company that comes on the market that's powering some kind of SOC 2 automation to say, get it done in days, get it done in hours. And I actually just don't know that that is, I mean, one, it's not realistic. It understates the reality of what how this all works. And two, I don't know that that's the right way to think about this. We want to make it efficient, but we also want to do the right level of education. So that making it too simple, that done in days, not really, to me, that's a flag to say whoever wrote that marketing probably doesn't really understand SOC 2, and I'm not sure I would trust them with my business.
Yep. No, absolutely. That's we run into that a lot as an
Yeah.
auditor. As you can imagine, we're basically now kind of stuck with delivering that promise that was made. And it's very difficult when we see that the clients are not even ready. When I go into a conversation about audit, I don't even talk about audit. I talk about readiness. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you don't need to know about this stuff. Let's talk about pre-audit. Are you ready? Is there a false start here? Even in CMMC space, which is evolving very
Yes.
quickly, there are a lot of false starts there as well, a lot of misconceptions. So the first segment that I have for you is the GRC landscape and what's
Cool.
changing, right?
Yeah.
By GRC, we mean governance, risk, and compliance. There has been a lot of noise around AI solutions in compliance. As a matter of fact, if you look at the YC batches, right, you'll see 5 new Vantas coming out in every
Mhm.
batch, right? Because you guys were part of that program, and so everybody's following you. How real is it today when we talk about AI solutions in compliance?
Not very real in most cases is what we found.
No, I appreciate the straight talk. I mean, that's
Yeah, it's there is a path to meaningful use of AI in compliance in this kind of work, and we're really excited about the work we're doing here. We just yesterday at VantaCon we announced our Vanta AI Agent 2.0, and we are really thoughtfully weaving AI into the experience, but we've also been really methodical about this, and we've studied the landscape. And you're right, there are a lot of new players on the scene introducing AI forward or AI native platforms, or so they claim. And I think you have to be really cautious about this.
so what
There
does it
is,
really mean? AI
well,
native means what?
I think it's a marketing term. I don't know that it
Exactly.
actually means anything real, especially if you get into the experience, and that's where we really encourage people to get hands-on with the platform they're gonna use
Right.
and see for themselves what it means. I think, it's easy to get sucked in by a marketing term, but we, for example, have really started with policies
Right.
first as a place to weave in AI. It's documents, it's word heavy, it's a place where AI can provide a lot of value. And then we are starting to orient the rest of the experience from there around AI. But to say none of the solutions on the market today are AI native. A lot of them, have bits and pieces, but the other reality in this landscape is that AI introduces an entirely new level of risk. You can't just sort of assume that your platform, your technology is safe and compliant on its own. So, really being thoughtful about how AI is used, that you're doing it in a compliant and safe manner. We, for example, pursued ISO 42001 as one other mechanism to prove that we are taking responsible AI development seriously. And unfortunately, that's not very common in the landscape. So, It's such a funny thing back to the cheap theme. I think people are looking for that easy button, but in that pursuit of the easy button for compliance, you don't wanna forget that your platform also needs to be safe and compliant. You don't wanna introduce additional risk into your business by using something that, perhaps hasn't been built with the same level of diligence. So, I think the landscape for how we think about AI risk is really evolving. It's very early days, and it's incumbent on everybody who's going to use one of these platforms to ask a lot of questions about how that has been constructed. Are they using best practices in AI development, and ultimately, are they handling your data responsibly? Because that's such an important part of the picture.
Yeah. No, I think it raises more questions than answers, right? And responsible AI is just critical. If you don't have guardrails, it's not about agentic versus agents
Hmm.
versus RAG. It's really about the guardrails that you have in place will set you apart in the market. So yeah, uh, fascinating stuff there. The next segment I have is around what's new at Vanta, right?
Hmm.
So, talk to me about competitors that you have that you run into in this space. There could be like holistic GRC solutions, more traditional, more
Yeah.
you know, uh, brick and mortar as I call them, very very kind of static interface heavy. And then you have some niche kind of GRC solutions that are solving some very specific use cases, right? So how do you think Vanta differentiates between all of these different players?
Yeah, it's a fascinating landscape because it is really fragmented in a lot of ways. There's this whole set of legacy players in the space. And like you said, a lot of them are very workflow centric. So, not really automated. They organize the workflows, which is better than a spreadsheet, but not by a whole lot. It's kind of a fancy spreadsheet with a nice UI on it. And, that whole landscape has been around for a long time. And there are a lot of enterprises that are using these legacy workflow tools. And there's some value in that, but I think at the heart of it, it really leads you down a path where the audit is a one point in time event, and you might be spending a lot of time on readiness, but you're essentially proving at a point in time that you're doing things right without taking into account the entire experience the rest of the year. So this is one of the things we love about automation, about continuous monitoring in particular, is that it is so much meatier. It is so much more real because you're showing in real time every day that you're doing the right things and you're building a compliant product. So that landscape is super interesting. I think that it takes time for enterprises and large companies to make change. And I think that trust building is a really important part of that picture. We at Vanta, we're really trying to build a platform that allows you to see holistic risk across your business, allows you to tie together all those workflows. And we bring automation to back that up, but the reality is enterprises, because they're so new to that and it's such a new paradigm, you really have to build trust in how does the automation work? How do I know I can trust it? How do I know what you're collecting? So there's a lot of education that goes into those discussions. And then you're right, there's lots of niche products out there, lots of point solutions. I believe ultimately people are going to want to have a single pane of glass. When we look at why people use Vanta, what we see is founders use Vanta to get ready for an audit and to be compliant for the first time. That leads to using Vanta to build your security compliance program. And then as we move up market, our customers there think about us a little bit differently. They're really looking for this risk graph. They want to use Vanta like a risk observability platform to understand the entire landscape of their business. So, audit is a part of that picture, audit readiness is a part of it, third party risk is a part of it. It's a much more comprehensive thing that they're trying to solve for, and that's how we see our largest customers use this. So it really changes the types of competitors we see, the types of solutions we see. And the reality is, I don't think there is one broad platform out there that does it all today. And that's ultimately what we aspire to be.
Awesome. No, that's great. I mean, you guys started a category of compliance automation, um, and that's I think is a powerful message to the industry that you need to not you need to build more efficiency in the process as opposed to just giving people more workflows
Yes.
and slowing them down rather, right? And I've heard this from talking to enterprises. They would be like, "Hey, we have 5 levels of approvals. Why?"
Yep. The why is a very important question.
I'm like, "Okay." I mean,
Yep.
that doesn't sound like a very efficient process to begin with. So, would you think about bringing it down to 3?
Mhm.
So, how do we pair process engineering or value engineering with automation is
Uh-huh.
critical. So anyway, I digress.
I'm with you. I love that, and I think that the why is the important question, and the reality that there is now a platform that offers automation. I think it gives everybody an opportunity to question
Right.
those things and think about how they've always done them
Yep.
and perhaps approach them in a new way. And we're finding people are really ready to do that. I think everybody in the ecosystem, we heard it this week at VantaCon, they're ready for change. I
Right.
think they recognize that there are these processes that don't necessarily make sense, but they're the way things have been done. And they are looking for that permission to change and innovate. And I think that a platform that reaches sufficient scale gives them a little bit of that backing and credibility to make change in their organizations. And for us, the goal with a lot of the automation work is it's great, it's efficiency, but it's about more than that. It's actually much more about enabling these folks, these GRC engineers and CISOs and their teams to do higher value work so they can focus on things that really move the needle in their business. And it's less about, oh, let's save them some time. Like that's the surface level value.
Right.
The real value is there are huge risks and we want them focused on those huge risks, not on going into systems and taking screenshots and trying
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
put that into some form.
No, I mean the entire evidence collection, domain or workflow or workload is just useless.
Yeah, yeah. And they end up spending so much time on it. And
Right.
like I think on a human level too. This is one of the interesting things we heard again this week. We really aspire for VantaCon to be a community event for GRC practitioners. And
Yep.
this is one of the big things we heard is like it's just not rewarding on a human level to do
Right.
that kind of work and to feel like your time is being wasted.
Right.
They know that they have to be the calm in the storm in their organization and they want to be able to focus all that time and energy on things that really matter.
No, absolutely. I mean, as an auditor, I'll tell you this: when we started our audit firm, I couldn't convince a single soul on the offensive security team to join me because of the fact that they didn't want the busy work, they didn't want the boring work. As a founder of an audit firm, I want audit to go away. And, the fellow auditors in the industry will hate me for saying this, but there is no need for us if we can get to the outcome that
Yeah.
we all are looking for in a different way and in a more effective way. Product compliance fit for growth stage companies, right? And then
Mhm.
we'll get to enterprise. But Vanta started in the kind of startup world, and in that world, you're working with a lot of developers and they're engineers and they're trying to engineer the solutions or the compliance task as well. How does Vanta help those developers shift left, right,
Mhm.
and drive product compliance engineering, and what does it even mean?
Yeah, I mean, this is something we're really excited about. I think that this feels like a very nascent opportunity, but there's a lot of excitement around it. Our team comes from a very technical background. Our founder, Christina Cassiopo, she's a product person. She was at Dropbox when she uncovered this idea of SOC 2 and SOC 2 compliance. She was trying to launch a product to market, and legal came knocking asking for her SOC 2, and she had to go research and figure out how to pursue that. So she's got a product background. Our chief product officer, Jeremy Epling, comes from GitHub. So obviously very technical. So they are very passionate about this. We're passionate about this as an organization. We're starting to hint at it in the platform in the way that we help our customers remediate issues, and we're starting to get much more prescriptive. But I think AI really opens the door to getting much more involved in this shift left, in this building compliance into your engineering process and workflows. It's, one of those things that I think engineers historically have seen compliance as something another team does that involves perhaps discrete tasks for them that are frustrating, that once they provide the proof, it's kind of over. I do think a lot of engineers see that that can't be the way and that they need to change, but they haven't really had the tools to do so.
Right.
So I think these next few years are really going to be about how do we educate and empower developers to understand compliance and security more deeply so it doesn't feel like the domain of the CISO and another team in another part of the organization, but it's foundational to how products get built and how we write code. It becomes even more important when you have not just humans writing code, but agents writing code. And,
Right.
it changes the whole landscape. So that is where some of this risk of AI really becomes much more real. And you need a team who's much savvier about how to do these things safely, how to build safely. So it's a movement that we hope to play a big role in. And I think there is a real role for human developers, kind of like in compliance where we talk about AI freeing our practitioners to do more meaningful work. I think it's very true for engineers as well. AI is now writing code. That's great. We still need humans to really have oversight of that and be thoughtful about how we do it safely. And I think that's where we hope to play a role.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as an auditor, we interview and spend a lot of time with engineers because they have access to a lot of the admin credentials.
Yeah.
So that's where you have the proof and the evidence leave. So it's difficult that we have to pull them out of a critical release
Yeah.
and a demo and have them kind of show us why don't we just automate the whole thing, give us more logs and tickets and JSON files as opposed to PDFs and screenshots and
Right.
spreadsheets, right?
I do think though there's like an opportunity there because we compliance, I think they think of compliance or they have historically thought of it as that audit readiness piece, but there is so much more to be done here. I thought there was a really interesting discussion on one of the panels at VantaCon this week. And one of the CISOs said something along the lines of they were talking about vendor reviews and when they're looking at the security of their vendors. And that one of the biggest red flags for him was if you ask a vendor, who has access to your production environment? And the answer is all of the engineers. For him, that is like the biggest deal breaker and the reason they would not sign a vendor up. And it's just indicative of a lack of understanding. So I do think that there's a real role, not just for technology here, but for education and for this compliance mindset to be applied more deeply to how we build products, because that understanding of least privilege access and making sure that data is protected, it becomes so much more important in a world where AI can access everything that is accessible. I think that's one of the horror stories I've heard about some of these new AI-powered enterprise search tools is you go set it up in your environment and suddenly you realize that like all of your Google Docs have the wrong permissions on them and like salary data is available. And I think we're just seeing this advent of, data being so much more accessible and searchable and available. I think it's true in code as well. And it's going to lead to a need for real education and making security and compliance part of the heart of how products get built.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right on. Compliance insights, if you think about that, I think that's where the value is. They want to be informed of any potential risks. So the real risks are things like privileged access, that was never reviewed. um you changed your job but you never got a new training based on your
Right.
role.
Right.
um so in larger enterprises we see that there are real risks that you can solve through compliance engineering, through having visibility, as you talked about, risk observability. I really love that term because that's really what we get paid to do in security, is to reduce risk. And right now we're spending half of our time doing basically nothing that adds value.
Right. Right. Exactly.
There is no point of like convincing me or satisfying me as an auditor if you cannot really convince yourself.
Right. That's a
so
great way to put it. Yeah, I think that's true.
so let's turn over to the enterprise side of things,
Yeah.
right? Really interesting topics. I personally feel, coming from enterprise GRC background, that's kind of what we did in our previous
Mhm.
life with all of the big players that the Archer, Open Pages, Matrix Stream, ServiceNow of the world. Um, we worked with large enterprises, took us years to implement them, and then evaluate them and keep changing, customizing them because nobody
Mhm.
really could agree on anything. So, what's the biggest learning curve when selling compliance automation solutions into a Fortune 500?
I think there are a bunch, but probably the biggest is that nobody does it the same way. I think that every organization has a very unique way of running their security and compliance programs. And a lot of it comes down to who the leader is, what their point of view is. And every enterprise is very unique. We work with some enterprises who are pretty static and they haven't changed a lot in decades and they've got antiquated processes and they might want to make a small amount of change when they bring in a platform, but more than anything, they're just like, I just want a little more efficiency, but generally want to keep things the same. Then we work with enterprises on the complete opposite side of the spectrum who are just changing constantly. Probably the biggest example of that is organizations that are making acquisitions frequently. So we work with a bunch of orgs like that. And for them, they view risk so differently because they're absorbing these companies and then like spinning them off. And it's this constant change, but everything they bring into their environment that's new introduces new risk. So they're all looking for creative ways to handle that. So I think that I expected this landscape to be a little more standardized. There are legacy players here. There are tools. We don't find it to be standardized at all. So, we're building a lot to ensure we can help all sorts of different organizations because they're so unique. And a lot of that is going to be built into our implementation practice, where we come into an organization and the first thing we know we have to do is really understand and map out how they do security and compliance at all. And that first map of how they work is fundamental to how we get our platform implemented, how we wrap it into the systems that they already have, because everybody's doing something a little bit different. And I hope we can get to a little more standardization, but today it's just not the case.
I mean, do you run into any kind of objections like, hey, this is a SaaS tool, we won't give you access.
Yes.
You shouldn't have so much data from us. The traditional kind of barriers to entry.
Hmm.
And then things like our GRC team is only 5 people. What is the value for such a big investment? Or, um, things like, we're multi-region, multilingual, multi-framework. How do you kind of overcome some of those kind of objections?
Yeah, we hit all of those. And, I think the first one is actually the most material because enterprises and the GRC practitioners in those large enterprises are very savvy.
Right,
So they understand if they're going to adopt a platform that they have to trust it
right.
and that we're going to be, part of the automation promise is we're going to integrate with their core systems. We're going to have access to a lot of sensitive data and that they really need to carefully vet the vendor and they need to make sure they feel good about it. And that's a big part of why our mission has to do with trust, because it's not just us helping a business to earn improved trust. It's that we have to be trustworthy ourselves. And that's something that's deeply built into who we are as a company and our values, because we know that our customers are deeply trusting us. And there is a lot of complexity in that layer of building trust when we first start working with an enterprise, because often we're dealing with somebody who might not even have the system as access to allow us to do the integrations, for example. So then we're going and working with another team who might not have learned about Vanta yet and saying, we need read only access to this long list of systems. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
like, what is this thing? And why do you need access to so many systems? So there is a lot of education and trust building there. A lot of how we are investing to prove that trust is, by pursuing our own compliance standards, being able to prove to the world that we are secure by design, that we are pursuing things like FedRAMP authorization. We want to show the world that it's not just we're helping you be compliant. We ourselves are serious about security and compliance. So that objection we try to overcome with a lot of education and a lot of trust building and honestly a lot of transparency. Those are the things that really we find help overcome it. Beyond that, it is interesting because these organizations, they're not always open to change. So, sometimes it is we're a small team and it
Do they
feels
feel
like a
threatened? Like, hey, are you guys going to replace my job?
it's funny because I expected
Right.
that.
Yeah.
We don't get that anymore.
Cool.
And I think it has to do with the fact that the risk landscape is so extreme.
Right.
And, these teams know they are in high demand and they are just underwater. They
Right.
are a 5-person team might be doing the work of 20 people.
Yep.
They know there is so much more to do. The thing that we actually hear a lot from these teams is help me prove I have business value. And that has
Absolutely.
become a very hot topic for the GRC practitioners
Even
we
for
work with.
enterprises.
Yes, absolutely. They want to be able to not just say, oh, we're helping the business be more secure. They actually want to quantify it in
Yep.
dollars. They want to say, we're helping enable revenue generation. We are helping you bring vendors into the environment securely. And they want to quantify it. A lot of the way they think about risk, they want to be able to quantify the amount of risk that they have reduced.
Hmm.
So there is a real drive to prove business value here. Some of it is so they can go get more resourcing, but some of it is that I think a lot of GRC practitioners are hungry for other executives and teams to understand that they're more than just a function that has to be there to check the box, but they are truly driving business value. We know that and they know that, but I think there's education they have to do of other executives. And so they're looking to us to help them prove that value.
Makes sense. No, that's terrific. The idea of co-innovation, I think it's powerful. That's what we do in today's world. You cannot operate and innovate, in an isolated kind of space
Mhm.
with so much dependency, on various third parties and technologies like LLMs. You
Yeah.
take, it creates a new infrastructure, a risk for you almost. The next segment I have for you, Stevie, has to do with the future of GRC. So,
Mhm.
being a futurist myself, I spend a lot of time thinking about what would it mean for my daughter, right? When
Mhm.
she grows up and goes out and looks for a job or creates something, right? So my question is like, how is Vanta thinking about the future and shaping the future? Vanta is not here to serve the need of present, right? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, there is a lot that we think is to come here. And the GRC landscape is so broad. There's so much here that we're excited to take on more areas where we think we can help companies reduce risk, prove better trust. And one we're really excited about is one that we started talking about just this week. We launched this idea of customer commitments. And this is another area where I'm really excited about the power of AI and what it can do. The idea behind commitments is that every business signs contracts. They sign contracts with their customers, with their vendors, and those contracts live in a repository somewhere, often in PDF form. And we all know in those contracts, we're committing to things like SLAs. We're committing to notification when things go wrong or if there's some kind of a breach. We're committing to all sorts of things that have compliance implications. But many companies know that those things sitting in a repository aren't well tracked. What we hear often from our customers is that they kind of know vaguely those things are out there and they might take maybe the top tier of their most sensitive contracts and track their commitments to those customers in a spreadsheet somewhere. That's like a best case scenario. A lot of companies we talk to aren't tracking them at all. And what happens then is when something goes wrong, they have to go pour through these hundreds of documents to figure out who do we even need to talk to? What's our commitment here? So we are launching a product called Customer Commitments that is going to leverage AI to review and scan your contracts and understand the commitments that you have made to your customers and give you an automated way to meet those requirements. So, say for example, you have a standard clause in all your contracts that says if we ever experience a breach, we'll notify everyone within 5 days. But you've got a subset of contracts that say you have to notify within 24 hours. What would happen is if let's say you experience a breach and you have to figure out what to do, what Vanta would do would be able to surface, here's your set of 10 customers to whom you had a 24-hour notification. Here's a set where you had a 48-hour. and would automate the work of driving those notifications. So, really, it is taking all of this latent risk that businesses have in the commitments they've made and surfacing it so they're actually actionable and they can be made real. So, we're really excited about that. I think it's an example of a place where everybody knows there's this latent risk in a business that's not really getting surfaced in a healthy way, not really getting addressed. I think we can drive a lot more visibility. And ultimately, when we do that, I think again, it increases trust. It just makes that business more trustworthy because they can then confidently say, we can execute on these commitments, we can follow through and make it real and not know we're just putting a contract in a corner somewhere and just signing it to get it done. So, I think that there are many areas that we can do that kind of work in, and we're excited to expand the surface area of the platform to be able to offer that one pane of glass so you understand all of the risk in your business all in one place.
That's fantastic because when we come in as an auditor, we start with service commitments, especially in SOC 2 audits. And then commitments lead to certain risks, risks lead to certain controls, right? Not the other way around.
Mhm.
So I think not starting with control, but starting with commitments is a great way to evaluate and understand the environment and the context, which is critical. um, and and as you said, we are a 300 people company, and when we have to evaluate things like, a do we need, is it a reportable incident or not, is it just an event, somebody clicked on a phishing link, right?
Mhm.
We run to the chief legal counsel and beg for some kind of advice, right?
Yeah,
And then she had to go through like all of these different, you know definitions of, like, is it an incident, is it an event, and is it reportable, it's not,
yep,
if so, then who do I report to, which contracts do I need to check to make sure that there is a disclosure
that's right.
requirement in that
Yes.
contract, that we need to know there's a confidentiality. So I think it's an amazing area that if you want to be a business risk platform, I think we definitely need to go, because, and especially in privacy as well, when we talk about validating a privacy management system statement in privacy audits like ISO 27701, we need to really understand the privacy policies,
Yes.
start with what they're claiming that they're
Yes.
compliant with. I'm sure you saw some of those messages going around. People are saying they're GDPR compliant. Like, what does that mean?
Right. I
So
doubt many of them could tell you, and I think that's the
exactly.
that's the real
So
challenge here.
if you have a platform to kind of get all of that
Yeah.
requirements and commitments in one place, that's I think gonna help a lot of our customers. And as an auditor, I'm gonna have to selfishly ask this question: do you think we will ever reach a point where systems are auditing, or companies are auditing themselves, what we call self-auditing systems, um, and the independent audit is dead?
You know, I am skeptical that it will ever completely go away. I think that the reality is somebody's got to audit the auditor.
Right.
There's always got to be some level of oversight. And I think there can be tremendous efficiency introduced. I do think a lot of the manual effort that goes into audit today can go away. I think there will always be a role for humans. And I believe this about AI in every way it can be used in a business. The beauty of AI and what it can do for us is it reduces that level of busy work and of tasks that don't take intellectual involvement, but there remains a role for humans. And, as we get farther down the path on automation, I think the role, the lives of auditors change. I think what they will ultimately do and what an audit looks like will change quite a lot. But I actually believe the humans will always remain in some form to ensure that the intent behind all of this work remains true. Trust to me is still a fundamentally human thing.
Yep.
And it's great if we've got systems doing a lot of the work and the heavy lifting for us, but we still need that human element on top to say, yes, I trust you. And that is why we're going to move forward. And I think that auditors will continue to play a role there.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. Um, I think about this a lot, and a lot of auditors are afraid of you guys as innovators.
Yeah. I get it. I get it.
And
It's a
like,
lot
hey,
of
what are they gonna
change.
do next?
Yeah.
Right? So they talk a lot about on LinkedIn and get some fame. But the way to think about it is really that if AI is doing a lot of work, who is going to audit them, right?
Right.
And so I think the opportunity for auditors from that standpoint. So what do we do as auditors? We tell the truth. We get
Yeah.
paid to tell the truth. And if we are a domain expert in a specific area, whether it's privacy, cybersecurity, AI, or you go into quality, health, environment, safety,
Yep.
you can't operate, um, a building without the building code being enforced, right? So the point of, you know, s- the human oversight will never go away, especially when I hear AI will do a lot of work.
I agree. I
Um,
agree. And I do think I get the fear and the trepidation in this
it's
area.
real.
It's super real and I get it. And it is so much change, but I really do believe that the role of the human is so fundamental to all of this, to trust, to what we're trying to, the whole purpose of the exercise. Because if it's all just machines talking to machines, that's great. They can do a lot of that heavy lifting. But ultimately, if nobody understands what those machines have committed to or audited, does it really mean anything?
One thing comes to my mind, in this kind of space would be the advent of high frequency, low latency trading.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, because I worked on Wall Street for many years for with financial regulations and large financial services companies, and those trading floors didn't go away.
Hmm.
They reshaped, they reformed, and they became some. And now all the great traders are trading from home,
Yeah.
and now you have everybody trading in the e trading and the TDs of the world, where you have the Robin Hood of the world. Everybody is a trader. So I think it's going to change for better. It's not just gonna stop and kill a profession. Um, those trading bots didn't replace a good trader.
They used to say the same thing about Excel, right? That it was
Right.
gonna put all the accountants out of business, and accountants still exist. They
Right.
just, the jobs are different, and I think
Yeah.
that is true here. I
No,
completely agree
even
with
like
you.
we're a federal assessor, and we see that in FedRAM, with FedRAM 20X. Who would
Yep.
have thought?
Yeah, I know. It's a huge
It's
amount of change.
fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's just unimaginable for us
Mhm.
and for my federal team that they have to change their thinking dramatically on how they deliver this outcome. Um, Amazing. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up, Stevie?
I'm just really grateful for your partnership. I think, back to this being a human endeavor,
Right.
we really love working with you and your team, and we're just so excited about where this is all headed. I think this week was a great example of what it looks like to build community around this stuff. I know that so many of us didn't know we would go into compliance, didn't
Right.
know we would be doing this kind of work, but it is so much richer and more interesting and exciting. And I think that there is like a very cool community to be built around this stuff. So I've become very passionate about it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to sit down and talk in more depth about it.
No, that's fantastic. No, absolutely. I mean, I come from technology background, and I never thought I would own a CPA firm. So now I do, because we want to disrupt that space, and do it for better. And we're constantly learning. We want to be transparent. We want to be honest. We want to be unbiased. And if we make mistakes, we talk about it as well. But yeah, I think it's important to disrupt this space,
Yeah.
for better. Otherwise, it will die. So we're trying to save it.
I love that. I think it's a great mission and it's an important one. There's such a need for this. And I think it is going to make software better and more secure. So I think it's ultimately a great thing.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Stevie.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.